Planning and Zoning Commission, January 23rd. And if we could please stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America. In case of fire or any other emergency, we have two ways to evacuate this chamber. One is right behind you, walk out and get as far away from the building as you can. And the second is go out the doors here and down the stairs and out as far away from the building as you can. Mr. Secretary, can we get a roll call?
Yes. Terrence Lynch.
Yeah, here.
Linda DeGray is absent.
Absent.
John Petronella is here. Frank Alimo is absent. Joseph Muley.
Here.
Kenneth Alinsky.
Here.
Vinnie Grillo.
Here.
Christian D'Antonio.
Here.
And Walter Crizel.
Here.
Okay, and I would like to seat Walter and Christian tonight, since the other two members are absent. So they will be sitting in on these hearings and voting. Next item for agenda is the approval of minutes. We have January 8th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Any questions, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
I abstained, I wasn't here.
I'll abstain because I wasn't here.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, I did watch it on YouTube, so that's why I voted.
Okay.
Just for the record.
The approval of minutes for January 9th.
So moved.
Second?
Second. Heard all those, any questions, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
And the third, January 15th, the special meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Any questions, concerns?
I abstained from this one.
Okay, all those in favor? With one abstention.
All right.
The town attorney report, I didn't see one, is nothing. Zoning enforcement officers,
No report.
nothing. Public participation, is there anybody here that would like to speak to the commission on anything that is not on the agenda? Going once, twice, gone. Next, bond releases. Continued public hearings.
None.
Okay. I would like to ask for a motion to swap items 10 and
I
11.
make a motion to suspend the rules and swap items 10 and 11.
I'll second.
Any questions, concerns? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
None. Okay. We're going to take care of special permit 1945. The people that are here, if they'd like to give us...
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, that's site plan review,
Yeah.
1945.
Oh. Oh, yeah, that's PR.
Yep.
I said special.
Name and address for the record.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jim Cassidy. I'm professional engineer and principal with the firm of Halsey, Pearson and Cassidy, 630 Main Street in Cromwell, Connecticut. We were before you last month, at which time we gave you our presentation for proposed modifications to the existing Dairy Queen at 395 Enfield Street. At that meeting, the commission had come up with several comments and recommendations, which we've gone back through the plans and tried to address them accordingly. So what we like to do is just go over the modifications that have occurred to the plan. Again, what we're looking to do out here is to basically reconfigure the site, mainly to improve traffic circulation for the drive-through window. On the plan that's up before you, and we demonstrated last time, what we're looking to do is, whereas today, I'll say the area towards the center of the site is where the existing drive-through is. There's only queuing for about 8 vehicles in total to the window. We're looking to extend the queuing, so the red vehicles would be vehicles queued to the menu board at the back of the site or to the east of the site, allowing queuing for up to 9 vehicles, and then the green would be from the menu board to the actual window, which adds an additional 7 vehicles for a total of 16 queuing spaces. This is going to prevent the situation where vehicles potentially back up into the road right now and make it a much safer site. As I also mentioned last time, we did need to actually decrease the parking from 22 down to 18 spaces, but a better circulation throughout the site. My understanding, I apologize, last month I actually had to step out of the meeting early, so Justin had picked up for me. But my understanding of the comments from the commission were, number one, with the area that we had out front, we proposed to have a seating area. There is existing the windows, service windows. The request was that we actually maintain a 5-foot landscape buffer between the front street line, which is shown in yellow on this plan, and the patio or the concrete queuing area for the customers at the service window. We've incorporated that onto the plan. So now what we have is we have a concrete pad from the face of the building up to 5 feet, within 5 feet of the front street line. The remaining 5 feet would be a landscape island. It would be landscaped with shrubbery. In addition to, on the edge of the concrete pad, we are still proposing to have a safety fence, a picket fence, a decorative picket fence to keep people from walking into that landscape area. What we've done is where we had a seating area there previously, and we've moved it to the back. We're proposing a 20 by 20 concrete pad at the back corner of the property to allow for some seating of patrons to this restaurant. You'll also see in the back island, we're using that as landscape area within the parking lot. There was a request that we add some additional landscaping to that. We are proposing to put 3 canopy trees down the center of that, and you also see a gray area that's going to be a stone dust pathway. So customers that are coming from the south side of the building can walk on the south side, and then ultimately cross that pathway and have a crosswalk at the back so they can get to that seating area safely. Other comments dealt with adding some signage along the front. We did update the signage, so we have the do not enter, and there you go. So now we have the type C signs would be do not enter, and then the type D would be a stop sign, and then on the other side of the driveway, we have noted that there's one-way circulation sign. So we did update the signage also. I'm going to have Justin pick up a little bit because he's the one that went through the comments, and he's actually the one who had to finish out the meeting for me last month and go through all the other revisions that were made to the plans.
Could I have your name and address, please?
For the record, my name's Justin Packard, project engineer with Halsey Pearson Cassidy out of Cromwell. So some of the other comments that came up mostly were from town staff on the online portal. So the engineering department did ask us to extend the existing concrete sidewalks in the frontage of Enfield Street so that it matched our new curb line in the front. So we did extend the 2 existing sidewalks and add a ramp into the curb line, and we also propose a crosswalk going through both fronts rather than before it was just shown as open pavement. Then we do have an area crosshatched here for no parking. Some other things that came up was for landscaping requirements. Number 1, we are required to have 15% of the interior of the parking lot landscaped. So we are proposing 15.9% as landscaped. The areas kind of shaded in a light green are what we're counting towards our interior landscaping space. And then we are also required to plant 4 trees because we're required 1 tree per 5 spaces. So we are proposing the 3 trees in the back island here, and we're also proposing a tree in the front island up here along Enfield Street. When we added the seating to the back of the property, we picked up a little bit of additional impervious surface. So to reduce the amount of impervious surface we had on the site and come below the 66% allowed with the zoning regulations, we actually are proposing to kind of reconfigure the dumpster enclosure in the back here. Previously, it was on this concrete pad here. So we're proposing to turn it 45 degrees and tighten up the pavement that's in the back there. So we're reducing the amount of pavement that was in the back so that we could add the impermeable seating area in the other side of the lot. I think that was a majority of the big comments. We do have a couple comments from engineering that they wanted us to add some standard notes to the plans. So that's something that we've agreed to, and we think that that can be a condition of approval, that we just add those notes to the plans. They have provided them to us. We just didn't have time to update the plans before the meeting.
So with that, we conclude and gladly answer any questions you may have.
Staff?
Thank you. So all the questions that the commission was asking for at the last meeting have been basically met. The only thing that was left to be discussed was the architecture under 8.60. All the online department comments have been satisfied. Engineering was satisfied. The only thing that you would have to keep in mind when making a motion to approve would be to approve the waiver of buffer yard C under section 10.20.C, which is in my staff memo for you to read tonight, should you choose to do so. And then 2 site-specific conditions. 1, the final plan shall include the adjusted photometric plan to show a 0.0 value light encroachment, so that will have to be fixed for final plan submission. And then the building architectural drawing shall be included in the final plan set and show elevations and measurements, length, width, height of building. And that's all I had.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the,
I just had one question.
okay, Ken?
Yeah, all right, so in the front, there will not be any seating there anymore. It'll just be people standing in line and,
Just queuing at the
Okay.
the service window.
okay, very good, thank you.
Anybody else?
Good job.
I have a question,
Okay,
Mr. Chair. I wasn't here at the previous meeting, but I did watch it on YouTube. But I do have a question concerning where the, I guess where your orders are being taken at the intercom system, which is, where the curve is on the western or eastern portion of the property. My question is, why would you put it there when the speaker would be pointing directly to a residential area pretty close where, the residential area is not developed, but at some point it could be? And I just look at a noise pollution type of thing, because I know that sometimes those speakers can be pretty loud, where, I would think that it'd be better suited on the southern portion and on the line where you drive in off the street and it's right up past the building and somewhere beyond the building and in that straight spot. Just a question, just out of curiosity, I remember we had an application a couple of years ago up on Enfield Street, and it was a concern with residents and noise pollution. I'm assuming that the hours of operation is probably 10 o'clock at night or somewhere thereabouts. But again, those speakers could be pretty loud. And is there anything in the ordinance that would cover noise pollution or this, where there's a comfort level? Just again, there's no that residential property is not developed now, but at some point it could be, and it could become a problem in the future.
The only thing that we have in our regulations basically just refers to the noise ordinance of the town.
Yeah.
So it would, which doesn't really talk about too much about direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, my thought was that it would be certainly pointing to the, if the speaker was pointing to the south, assuming south is on the lower portion of the plan, it would be pointing toward another business rather than in a residential zone. But it's just a comment. I'm not saying I would be requiring, but I do see a potential issue in the future that, I just want to make it go away if at all possible.
So a couple things. The position of first the board is actually the speaker's at a 45, so it's not directly doesn't point directly to the property to the east.
Mm-hmm.
It points more down towards the southeasterly corner of the property. The evergreens you see are existing. It's pretty actually significant evergreen hedgerow that's out there today. One of the key things we were trying to do and improve on this overall property is safety, and you tend to have more queuing at the menu board than you do from the menu board to the window. Mm-hmm. So that's why we kind of end up with this location as the best of both worlds, to take care of the safety concerns of the site. we could, take a look at being able to turn down speaker volumes like later in hours.
Yeah, be mindful of it, that's all. I mean, overall, I think it's a good plan. I think it's a big improvement, and certainly, appreciate the improvements that's being proposed and what you've done from the last meeting to this meeting to address concerns from other staff members. But overall, I think it is a good, a major improvement to what you have there now.
Appreciate it.
That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Walter?
Yeah, question through the chair to the staff. That property behind, isn't that all wetlands?
It is not wetlands. It is currently vacant. However, the access for this site is actually north past the commercial. It's a split zone property, so it's R33 in the back, but it's all wooded, and then it is BL in the front portion. There's one vacant building towards Enfield Street, but right now it's just all wooded, and there's a strong existing vegetative buffer on those property lines.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I'll entertain a motion to do whatever we have to close this.
Nope, it's not a public hearing.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion for approval. John?
Public hearing was closed, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and.
This is
okay,
not a public hearing.
Review.
Right. Oh, this is site plan?
Yep, don't forget the
Also,
waiver.
there are, question to staff through the chair, the two additional conditions which are listed on your report, those are going to be added to what you have for conditions, to the 26 conditions listed now, is that correct?
Yep, that's the
So there'll
plan.
be 28 in total?
Yes, it'll be 20. Let
Right.
me just double check.
So I'll read those into the record.
It's just 25 conditions. They're all ordered correctly for 25 conditions with one motion for a waiver and one motion for approval.
I'm seeing 26 conditions,
26.
plus the two.
No, it's 25. They're all ordered
Says
correctly.
26.
The site specifics are 1, 2. General conditions start at 3. Conditions met prior to the signing of plans start at 9. Prior to the issuance of permits start at 15. And then COs start at 21 and end at 25.
That's not what we have.
We're reading different things here, my dear.
Do you have the right memo for the date of 1/23/25? That is weird.
Yep.
Site specific is 1, 2, and 3.
What's
General.
3?
3's on the top of page 5.
And then 4 through 9.
Can I see one of your memos?
15.
Because that's not right. Thank you.
Is this a new one that we didn't see?
Not that I'm aware of.
Why did it copy like that? So the one that you have before you includes the additional site-specific of the landscaping legend, will clearly call out existing versus proposed plantings and include such existing trees within the legend and planting table. I removed that condition because the applicant's engineer satisfied that condition in their revised plans. So you can strike that one. It is actually 25.
Which number is that now?
25.
Which one are we getting rid of? What number?
Which number?
Site-specific condition number,
Which one?
the one about the landscaping legend.
No, number 2.
So that one's gone.
That's weird. I don't know how they got that.
That's number 2.
Yep.
Number 2.
Yep.
Yep, that was satisfied and I
wins.
verified.
There you go.
Is it an appropriate time to bring up a question about one of the conditions? There was, I don't know what you have on the actual site-specific conditions. Georgina, we talked about the one about the requiring an as-built for the CO. This is an existing building with a CO.
Right, so You're still gonna need the as-built in general once the site's been finished,
Right,
but
but I just want to clarify that there
yeah, you're
already
not
is-
gonna need the
right,
as-built
there's
for an
already a
existing
CO on
building.
the building, so I didn't know if we wanted to modify that, just to say we had to
Thank you
provide
for
a site
reminding
as-built.
me. So the condition under conditions which must be met prior to the issuance of a certificate of compliance, there is, let's see which one it is. We do not need an as-built of a foundation. That is condition, I think it's 23 on your copies. And then the as-built for, actually, that's the only one, actually. That's the only one.
Wasn't there one about having as-built prior to the
Yep.
CO?
That was the only one. The only other as-built you'll need will be final site completion, certifying that everything was done in accordance with final plans.
Yep.
And that is all I have. So in that case, you're now looking at 24 conditions of approval. We are striking out the site-specific condition. I believe on your copy is number 3 that talks about landscaping legend. And then condition number on your copy should be 23 for as-built of any foundation if increasing building footprint must be provided and approved prior to the construction of any vertical component of a building. That one can't be stricken. Apologies, number 2 then.
Okay, so 2 and
2 and
23
23.
are out. Okay.
Mr. Secretary, do you have all that?
Yeah, I think I know what we're doing. Bear with me. Okay, we're going to do the waiver first. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve a waiver with Section 10.20.c of the C buffer yard requirement under Section 10.20.b III with the finding that the existing vegetation between the subject site and abutting residential 33 property allows the adjoining land uses to be sufficiently protected.
Second.
Would you like to call a roll, please?
Kenneth Helinski,
4.
Vincent Grillo. 4. Joseph Muley.
4.
Terrence Lynch.
4.
Christian D'Antonio.
4.
Walter Crizel.
4.
And John Petronella is 4. And let's go for the big one now. I'd like to make a motion to approve SPR number 1945, 395 Enfield Street application for a site plan modification for Dairy Queen. Michael Cassetta applicant, RMP LLC owner, map 33, lot 233, BL zone, Enfield King Street Design Overlay District with the 24 conditions listed, which includes condition number 2 and number 23, and added 2 conditions per the Planning Department comments as of January 16th, 2025 concerning the photometric plan and the landscape sheet.
Second.
Roll call, please. Any questions or concerns? Roll call, please.
Kenneth Helinski,
4.
Vincent Grillo.
4.
Joseph Muley.
4.
Terrence Lynch.
4.
Christian D'Antonio.
4.
Walter Crizel.
4.
And John Petronella is 4.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And now, go to public hearing,
Yeah.
3112ZA.
Yeah. The Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at the regular meeting of Thursday, January 23, 2025, at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, concerning the following applications. Public hearing number 3112ZA, application for text amendment to allow farm worker housing by modifying sections 4.20, 4.60.2, 5.20, 6.20, 8.140, 9.10.2, and supporting definitions. Jarmark Farms LLC applicant.
Name and address. Good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Dwight Merriam. I'm a lawyer. My office is at 80.
I'm sorry.
80 Latimer Lane. Well, I'm a planner too, so maybe that helps some. But
I don't know.
in Simsbury, and I'm here representing the applicant, and representing the applicant is Stephen Jarmark and Owen Jarmark of Jarmark Farms LLC. Now, I understand from staff as I arrived here this evening that you have all my thunder already because she passed on to you my outline of remarks, which I had expected to go about 15 minutes, but I can do shorter than that now if you have that outline in front of you. If you need another copy, I got plenty of them. Anybody need a copy of the outline? It's called presentation outline.
The only thing I'll say, Dwight, is that they got it today, so they may not have had.
Okay, no, I'm going to
full
go through it anyway,
opportunity
but if
to-
you don't have a copy in front of you, I've got 10 copies here. So everybody got a copy? Yep. All right. So I do this as a habit to, help us move along on something like this. And as I said, I timed myself. I take 15 minutes. You're welcome to interrupt or ask questions, but if you don't, we'll be done in 15 minutes. So at the outset here, I identify who's in attendance, and back behind me, in addition to the Jarmark sitting here with me, is Derek Donnelly. The idea of this is to amend your regulations in several different areas to enable the construction of farm worker housing. This does not approve any specific development in any particular location. The principal criterion being you have to have a farm of 10 acres or more to start. The applicant, as I said, is Jarmark Farms, which owns, by my count, just skimming through the land records, more than 20 parcels totaling more than 400 acres, but there are plenty of other farmers here now and who may come later who can take advantage of these amendments and be able to apply for farm worker housing. If you turn onto the second page, under the title of the need for farm worker housing, I give you 8 points, I think it is, but the number one is that your plan of conservation and development is probably the best plan of conservation and development I've seen with regard to agriculture. I'm a member of the Farm Bureau. I work with the Farm Bureau. I one of the advisors to their recent publication on zoning for livestock. I'm really interested in these issues, and I see POCDs all around, and this community is committed, totally committed in its planning, and we hope through these regulations to preserving, promoting, and advancing agriculture in the community. So I'm not going to go through the individual POCD provisions, but they're there for your reference. And then turning over onto page 3 of my outline and numbers 2 through 8, I'll summarize those in this way. They're really pretty much all the same thing. There are not great efficiencies to be made in farming. Artificial intelligence can help a little bit on irrigation and application of pesticides and various herbicides and the like. But on balance, it's about labor. You can't be a farmer unless you can have labor. And in this environment, you can't find labor locally. A lot of it is coming from offshore. It comes through this federal program, the H-2A farm worker program, that requires the owners of farms who want to bring in labor from outside the country to help them to provide, without charge, safe, clean, proximate to the work location housing. And there is a complex and detailed system at the federal and state level for the construction, operation, and management of that housing. If you don't do the housing, you're not going to have the farm workers. If you don't have the farm workers, you're not going to have the farms. And once we start constraining that labor pool by not having farm workers, we begin to lose what planners call critical mass. You have to have a certain number of farmers and farming in order to support the implement providers, the maintenance people, the people who provide fertilizer, pesticides, veterinarians for livestock. And once the farm base reduces below that critical mass, those secondary supply sources begin to disappear, become too expensive, and we find communities spiral down to having no agriculture, just one subdivision after another subdivision, which is not what your POCD wants to have and not what these regulations are going to allow you to have. Why is regulation required? That's the bottom of page 3. There are a couple of farm worker housing developments that were previously done many years ago, but without benefit of any detailed regulation. So we talked with staff, and we said, we need something that's detailed that allows you as staff to review, make an easy decision based on clear criteria, and then issue a certificate of zoning compliance and allow the housing to go forward. Make some exceptions on what's required in the site plan, because these are housing units within the farm boundaries, and make the process expeditious and make it clear and non-controversial. So, going over here onto page 4, here's how we did it. About 6 months ago, when I was asked to take a look at this, I have resources that I can draw on all over the country, and I made a deep dive. There aren't that many good examples. There just aren't. They just aren't out there. Most places just don't regulate it at all. It just happens. In, Oklahoma, West Texas, it just happens. California has a fairly detailed labyrinth of infrastructure, institutional infrastructure, but the Imperial Valley is not the town of Enfield. It's not Connecticut. It's a different environment. So we couldn't really learn much from other people. So I started to write. I went to the Farm Bureau, as I said, with whom I've had a long-standing relationship, and talked with Joan Nichols. I said, what do you got? She says, we don't have much. So she gave me regulations from Windsor, Killingly, and Guilford. That's all they had. That's our Farm Bureau. That's all they had. So I started writing based on what I knew, and then talked with staff, and then gave them a draft, and they had some very good suggestions, which I incorporated. And then I thought, I better run this harder. So I then started, and you see a map here, a little map with the check marks. So I started with Enfield, and I started spreading out to all the towns around. I took all their regulations, I put them in a searchable database so I could word search all the regulations in all these towns. And I personally searched them all with 7 or 8 different keywords: farm worker, labor camp is a term I used, which is an old term, and I thought maybe the older regulations use labor camp. And I searched that. And most towns have nothing. A few towns have a few good things, and a couple of towns do a pretty good job. And I made a compilation of all those regulations. Here it runs, 17 single-space pages, shared it with staff. But there really wasn't much that helped us, because we had pretty much found our way through all of the amendments that we needed. So now let's look at the amendments themselves. And you have those highlighted, and if you look on those with me, you'll see. The way you handle agriculture is kind of scattered throughout the regulations. I actually physically sat down and read your regulations from front to back twice. That's the only way I can be sure I find things. And I also did word searches throughout to just double check. I identified every place in which farm worker housing might be addressed. And ultimately, staff and I agreed that we had found them all, but there are many. Just reading the notice of the hearing tells you how many there are. So we start off in the definitions, the definition of farm that's already there, number 44. And if you look on, you have this highlighted, yellow and highlighted. So we added farm worker housing as part of a farm. Makes sense. And then we added 2 new definitions. We had lots of choices on definitions. These are ones that I drafted based on many other places. They're shorter than some, longer than others. I think they fully define what we need to do. But also with farm worker housing, we tie into section 31.22 of the regulations of the statute of the state of Connecticut. This is it in my hand. Don't ask me to read it. It's very long, but it basically says a farm worker is somebody who works on a farm. But only the General Assembly would have something that's that long to say that. So, but that's reference. If somebody questions whether somebody's a farm worker, we send them to this and as a bit of punishment, but it's very clear who's a farm worker and who isn't. And then what's farm worker housing? We say it's an as-of-right accessory use, not a principal use. It's accessory to a farm, but it is subject to a certificate of zoning compliance by staff, as you'll see throughout. Now we move down to 420. This is residential districts and the table of use requirements. And so we have to add to that note that agricultural activities which require a special permit, and that's all in there already, but we want to make sure that it's clear to people looking at it that farm worker housing is an accessory use by right with a zoning permit, does not require a special permit process. Then we go to note 5 and 420, same sort of thing, and uses farm worker housing in the carve-out from all farm buildings and uses which are subject to all those dimensional requirements. Because as you'll see in a moment, the only dimensional requirement that we have is 100 feet from the property line. What's going to happen as a practical matter is farm worker housing is going to happen somewhere out in the middle of the farm. And it'll be easy to achieve a 100-foot setback on all property lines. Over on the next page, amendment to 4.60.2, that's the section of your regulations dealing with non-residential uses in residential zones. And there we add a whole new subparagraph D about setbacks of 100 feet from any of the property lines. Then in 520, that's your use requirements for business and business development districts, remembering that your agricultural uses, although they're mostly in residential districts, they got one in an industrial district, and they may cross over into other districts, that we need to address farm worker housing in all of those. So we include with the description in the note 9 of farm activities to include farm worker housing. Then down to note 18, again, including as an exception to the agricultural activities, making sure that people understand it's an accessory use by right, subject to a zoning permit. In 620, that's your industrial park regulations. Same thing, farm worker housing's added. And note 7, use requirements for industrial park districts added there as well, just to make clear that in the industrial park districts, farm worker housing on a farm of 10 acres or more by the owner of the farm for farm workers as defined who work on farms owned by the farm owner are permitted. Then finally, we get to do something on the last page of this, section 8.140. Article 8, as you know, is your kind of, I don't know what you call it here in town, but it's kind of a catch-all. We see them in zoning regulations every, huh? Special regulations. Special, I know, you call it special regulations. It's a kind of, we call it kind of a Christmas tree regulation where you can hang stuff on that you need to have in there, but not fully integrated necessarily elsewhere. And so you go down through, and 8.134 is the last section, subsection, and special regulations. And so we picked 140 as a place to start because there could be sub-paragraphs to that later added, and to give you the flexibility to do that. It's the right place to put it, at least under the current organization. So here, and I'll end with this, the purposes: support farms economically, make sure they have workers, because they can't be a farm without workers, and recognize the importance of that labor to farms, and finally carry out the directive of the Plan of Conservation and Development, which is so strong, as I said at the outset. The procedure requires site plan review by staff and issuance of that certificate of zoning compliance under 9.10.5 of your regulations. Location, you got to have 10 acres, you got to be set back 100 feet. It's an accessory use. Exclusive use. We thought it was important to make clear that that housing can only be occupied by workers who are employed by the owner of the farm on which the housing is located or other farms under the same ownership, where the employment is indeed agricultural labor, as defined in that long subsection of the Connecticut General Statutes. Minimum acreage, it's a little bit redundant, but it's appropriate to call it out separately, 10 acres. And then density. We kicked around 2 or 3 different ways of dealing with density. This one is actually lifted from Summers, which works very well for them. And we thought, in consultation with staff, and I thought just directly as I wrote it, that this was good, that 2 beds per acre of farm was appropriate, would meet the needs of the farmers without creating excessive housing either. And then finally, what's important to remember, as I said at the outset, is that under the federal law that enables farmers to bring in labor from offshore, there is a very detailed federal and state system. And so we thought it was really important to, they obviously have to comply, but to reiterate it here specifically to flag that there is a complex system, to call the attention to the federal and state regulations. Finally, in the end, the last page, site plan content. There are some things that you just don't need with farm worker housing. So why have them? They have no cars. These people come to work, live in the housing, they go to work, they come back, they do some recreation there on the site, and relax, and they're fed there. They're, they wash their clothes there. There's got a laundry in these buildings, required to have by the federal and state law, and but they have no cars, so they're not driving. So we don't have parking for them. Landscaping, it's in the middle of a farm. The outdoor lighting is taken care of by the farm, and we don't need an A2 survey in most cases where the applicant can demonstrate that the setbacks will be met. So with that, I'll conclude. We're pleased to have this draft as it is. It was a very, enjoyable, I would say, effort in concert with the staff. We took a little bit from each other and incorporated it in this draft, and we think it's pretty good. Well, we think it's better than pretty good. And we'll hope you that will enact it because it is an essential, an absolutely essential precedent to keeping farming in Enfield. If you don't do this, you're not going to have farming. It's just as simple as that. And the sooner this gets enacted and we can get building and the other farmers that need workers' housing can get building, the better, because there are opportunities. There are great opportunities in this town to expand on the existing base within the acreage that's already farmed and to farm additional acreage if we can get the workers to do it. Can't get the workers to do it unless you have the farm worker housing. So we're open to questions, comments, and any way we can help you.
Comments?
You don't want to ask? Oh, sure, I'll go first. So yeah, Attorney Merriam and staff, we did work quite rigorously, and I'll say that Attorney Merriam gave us most of the data. So he did his longest work. We're all in favor of doing some farm-friendly regulations. I'm sorry, my mic's not on. We are all in favor of doing the farm-friendly regulations. We're not necessarily right to farm community at this time, but that is something that might happen. We did want to create a system for a safe housing for workers, for farm workers. We did eliminate the need for the site plan approval because we want to treat this, we want to make things as simple as possible for the farmers so they can just farm instead of work with red tape. Basically, we're proposing to treat this just as a house, a residential house is going up anywhere. So we're going to require the zoning permit and the building permit. They will be required to have a full engineered plan, grading and drainage and, whatever utilities. They just won't have to come through this commission. So we will still be reviewing this in detail as, for safety and proper drainage. I agree that ag statute is probably the longest run-on sentence in the world. The farm worker housing is definitely considered part of agriculture. And just for your information, when we're redoing our regulations, as we are, all of these sections will be incorporated into one agricultural section. So it won't be so disjointed as it is right now. That's about it.
Comments, questions? Vinny?
How are you? First of all, you have no idea how happy I am to have you come here for a farm and not a solar plant. No idea. Farming, I agree. We need it. Depressed every time I see one go away, and once again, a solar field goes up. So I know we do have a couple farms in town that actually has housing.
One of them is yours.
I think it's kept up nice. I've seen it. I'm not against it. I understand you do get your workers from overseas. They do have to have somewhere to live. As long as staff is okay with it, I feel myself, I'm happy with this. Like I said, a farm, you can't go wrong with that. In my eyes, I'll take that any day over solar fields. Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Walter.
So, isn't there one on Fletcher Road by the railroad tracks?
You need to say who you are. All right.
Oh, man.
Getting old. Hi, Steve Jarmock, 520 Hall Hill Road, Somers, Connecticut. No, we don't have a labor camp on, the Charnley Road site.
Not Charnley, on Fletcher Road.
Yes, on Fletcher Road, Colga has one.
That's the other, that's the other farm.
Yeah, it used to be an old consolidated farm. He bought it, and that labor camp still goes with it. It would need to be certified every year. He hasn't had men there for, a number of years.
It's been a
probably
while,
since,
because they used to come by my house and
early
go shopping.
2000s. And right, they have two, the Colgut farm also, with the purchase of the consolidated land, they do have two labor camps on Park Street. It's Park Street, one right at the corner of Park and North, and then there's one further down Park, actually behind. There's two tobacco sheds, and there's a camp facility there also, and then of course ours, which are both on. There's one on Moody Road, and there's one on Abbey Road.
So through the chair to the staff, so how were those built in the past without any of these text changes?
There was some, there was a regulation where, I think actually what it was it was considered accessory to farming, but there was no details as to how it was supposed to work.
We're just correcting
Yeah.
and oversight.
I will say that at this time, I have not heard of any zoning violations or complaints from any of these locations. And, basically, we're trying to put this into the regulation so they have a right to utilize it.
Perfect.
There's a path.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I got some questions.
Yeah, if I could, Derek Donnelly, I'm also representing the Jarmocks here. Those two that Steve talked about, that are on their property did come before this board, one in 1999 and another in the early 2000s. So they did go through an approval process, but as Ms. Witten said, this was considered accessory previously, and this closes the loop on that, makes it a regulation moving forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one moment. If you wouldn't mind using the microphones, just because these little things are really sensitive, so when you move them around. Thanks.
Perfect.
Yeah, I wanted to know where does the 10 acres come from on that? Because 10 acres, really? I mean, you need a labor camp for a 10-acre farm? I mean, a
First of
mom and
all,
a pop could take care of 10 acres.
Remember that you're not going to see a 10-acre farm as a practical matter with farm worker housing at remember what our standard is for density?
Yes.
So
2 per acre, 2 bedrooms per acre.
So
that
you'd
would
get
give you
20 beds out of that, and that's not going to solve a lot of problems. There are economies of scale. A typical building may be in the order of 60 beds, okay? So you need a much larger assemblage of property. But where did the 10 acres come from? You know, I was thinking through today, I've worked on this for a while, I was thinking through today, where did the 10 acres come from? And the 10 acres is sort of pulled out of the air. It could have been smaller, particularly in a smaller town that has some ag and wants to provide some ag workers. It could be bigger. But when we went back and forth with staff, we thought that 10 acres was about right. There's nothing in the literature, I'll tell you that points us to that kind of minimum. There are some minimums around, but nothing that says, and remember, I happen to be a planner as well as a lawyer, nothing in the literature that says it should be 5 acres or 10 acres or 20 acres. We just thought 10 for a town of this size and the size of some of the farms would work for both smaller farmers and larger farmers. I would point out, incidentally, I should have said earlier, you saw the Council of Governments comments. It's in the outline at the bottom of page 4. And they said, among other things, Capital Region Council of Government staff commends the effort as it aligns with goals to diversify the region's housing stock compatible with neighborhood context, as well as increase the available affordable housing in the region. So we were pleased that they found it to be useful, and it may serve as a model for some of the other towns, because really they're all deficient, I got to tell you, having looked at them all. And they could learn something by what you're doing here in Enfield, I would say.
So, yeah, thank you. But so as a matter of right, so I guess right now the procedure would be some sort of an application for site plan review or public hearing, or what would it be? A public hearing right now, the way it stands? They'd have to come before us for a special use permit?
I believe in the past it came via site plan approval.
For special use permit?
It was a special use permit,
I think that's the way it was handled. You know, what happened, that was, I didn't cover it in my presentation because that was like, what, 20 years ago or some long time ago. I think it was probably a special permit. We don't, but the problem was they had no criteria. Now we got a wealth of good criteria that tells us exactly what it should be. And the idea is that staff would be able to review and issue a certificate of zoning compliance, which would then be a basis for issuing the building permit. I think the way I look at it is that you know, there aren't going to be any issues there. If there were, it's something that I think could come before the commission for some consideration. If staff said, we're not issuing it, we don't think you comply, we say, no, we comply, you just, and then we'll end up in front of you. But it would not be a special permit, and it should not be, in my judgment, a site plan with a regular public hearing. You can have a site plan review without a formal public hearing and all the notice and stuff that comes with it. It's all open to the public with the public review. But I think we've nailed the issues. I don't think there's ever going to be a problem that requires elevating it to this
Well,
commission for
you
public
can't have a problem if you're taking the public out of it, because you're making it as a matter of right. I just want
Well,
the
no,
commission to
different than-
understand that. So we're talking about, a 50-bed dormitory in a residential area where the public doesn't have an opportunity to have any comment. And I'm not against the concept of doing something like this, but there's a lot of the farms are located near a lot of dense residential areas, and you're not allowing the public, I guess per se, to have any input on it. And as Lori said, I mean, she said there is no problem with the 2 dormitories that you have now, and I would agree. I'm not saying that there's an issue, but I just don't know how the public would feel about, especially on a 10-acre site, which is a small site. 10 acres is small. You put up a 20-unit dormitory. And if it's a 10-acre site, I'm saying it's probably in a densely populated residential area, a subdivision area. So that's just a concern that I have with this.
Again, you know from being on the commission that they're very site-specific, all your applications and so forth. What's going to happen as a practical matter, in my experience as a planner as well as a lawyer, is that, first of all, we got a minimum setback of 100 feet. Farmers are going to want to put this housing sort of towards the center of their parcels, away from the edges. That's where they're going to be. The smaller sites are unlikely to be developed with farm worker housing. And, you're concerned about the public. If there was deep public concern, they would express it to staff. The staff would consider that. And if they felt that they were not capable of resolving those public concerns at the staff level, I think they come here and tell you, we're at an impasse. What do you want to do? Then you could hold a public forum meeting with a site plan approval. You don't have to have, as you know, a public hearing. I was going to do the quotes thing. I hate that. You don't have to have a public hearing, which requires all the notice and all the formality that comes with it. The people that are concerned about it, if the neighbors were, that expressed it to staff, staff would resolve it with the applicant. The applicant might make some changes in the application to satisfy the neighbors. The applicants want the neighbors to be their friends. They don't want to be crossways with the neighbors, so they will be flexible. But in an exceptional, unusual, and we hope never happens, impasse, staff can come to this commission. You can put it down on your agenda for a public meeting, invite all the neighbors in, and we'll have a big public discussion about it. And you'll make a decision as to whether it complies. Just not going to get there.
We would have that authority?
That's the way, as I read 9.10.
Taking away their matter of right, and so.
Well, as an enforcement issue, yes.
Yeah, 9.10.2, is it? 9.10.5. I mean, that's what the applicant, if the staff says, we're not giving you your certificate of zoning compliance, the applicant's going to want to come here and say, the staff, we disagree with the staff. We think we are in compliance.
Yeah.
Take a look at it. But again, the chances of that happening are so remote. But your concern is, I understand your concern, but there is an avenue to address it. If there are some problems with neighbors and adverse impacts, they're going to complain to staff. Staff is going to have to make a decision. And if they feel they can't approve it, they're going to deny it. Then the applicants are going to say, let's go talk to the commission. Come here in a public meeting, have a discussion about it, and see what you think. If you deny it, then, they have their remedies, and you may approve it, or you may get both sides to come to the middle, which is really what you do best.
Yeah, thank you. My feeling is, I think the 10 acres is a little bit, I think it should be more like 20 acres, to be honest with you. I'd be a little bit more comfortable with that. Also, this is a public hearing. I know that we've got a call for public input, which I don't think there's anybody here, so there, you know, it certainly answers your question. If the public has issues, they'd be here tonight too, and they're certainly not. But I guess that 10-acre thing really is, you know, for housing.
I got
Or dormitories.
You okay, Tony?
No, I'm okay with 30. 20 doesn't, I don't care.
Commissioner Petronella?
I feel like Coach Hurley or something.
No, yeah.
While they discuss real quick, I just want to say that you always reserve the right to edit and change your regulations. Should you find that we do receive a lot of public complaints about farm worker housing, then you can make it a special permit. You can make it a site plan review. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that you always have the right to change your regulations at any point in time of proper public hearing procedures.
Yep.
And Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, when we were discussing the 10 acres, and again, this is you know, brand new territory for us and pretty much most of the 169 municipalities in the state. We didn't want it to be smaller because, you know, they might have a property that's like 5 acres or 4 acres. We didn't want to have that potential density on such a small lot. And we're also trying to preserve the farming ability of these properties as well. So even though that's 10 acres, they might still have a couple acres of tobacco growing around the dwelling. So we were just kind of trying to find a happy medium. Yeah,
We also figured that 10 acres would give a chance to more farmers rather than less farmers. Farmers are struggling in the market, and they're struggling to maintain their farms and keep them in the family. I have many farms in Enfield are going up for sale, not just Enfield, but around northern Connecticut. So one of the main reasons is economic value and money. They are struggling to afford to be a farmer. So we figured that 10 acres would be a good minimum because it gives those smaller farmers a chance.
right.
Are you done?
You all set?
Okay. Yeah, I'm confused. What is the process today for them applying for a permit to build a farm worker dwelling?
Well, it's funny that you ask that because our regulations don't really address farm worker housing, which is why these applicants are here before you tonight.
So what have we done in the past? What has been done?
In the past, it was allowed by special use permit, but there have been some predecessor oversights to how that was approved, some typos here and there from past files of how that got approved. I did a deep dive when Mr. Merriam came into our office with this text approval, and I managed to find the original special use permits from way back when from both of those farm properties that were referenced. And that's what I found, that there was a discrepancy in the approval from predecessors. So to be frank with you, our regulations don't really allow farm worker housing. It was seen as an accessory use, but the file that was approved was the wrong zone for that type of use to be approved in the first place. But regardless, they are here tonight to fix that and actually let it be in the regulations to allow it. That way you have something to look at, you have something that you can review, and that this is actually a better way of regulating this use and benefiting the town.
Okay, so you're saying in the past it would have been, I guess, a special
Should
use
have been.
permit
Yeah.
and all of the, red tape and...
Right, so the special use permit was allowed, well, the way it was because it was an accessory to the farm, and that's where the whole special use permit came in. In the industrial districts, that's where the trigger for a special permit came, any type of accessory to a principal use, and that's what that fell under.
Right.
So that's why it was a special permit in the past.
Okay. So we'd have to review site plans and all that stuff?
Right.
Yes, according to what the text before you is tonight says.
It wouldn't, I have those minutes of that meetings in which those were approved. I didn't even bring them with me because they are totally irrelevant.
Okay, I'm just trying to get it, I'm trying to get a feel of what was passed and what do we,
Yeah.
I understand what we're trying to do.
What happened in the past is way in the past, and what we're trying to do because there were no criteria for that. It didn't have anything about density, didn't have any tie into the federal and state laws, didn't have the setback, it didn't have anything. It was construed as an accessory use. It was handled through a special permit process. It's arguable as a matter of law whether that exists today or not. That is not a path anybody wants to go down. This is the path we want to go down. Clear criteria, the best we can do in terms of regulation, and a process that's expeditious, but can involve this commission if, for some reason, there's a breakdown with staff, which is not going to happen. But in my view, what happened in the past is not relevant to what we're...
I'm just asking what was in place.
No, it's fair to ask. I'm just saying that it was a mess, I got to tell you.
Okay.
3 years ago.
All right.
I think that's why
understand
we've
that.
been
Okay.
stumbling. It's kind of like, it was a
So with the
mess.
zoning permit now process that we're touting.
Zoning and building permit, so does,
What?
it will of course
and
require building permit,
So we
but
would-
that's outside of our
So the
purview.
town would review the structure prior to any starting of construction and.
We might even have an ART if need be.
Okay, all right, okay.
But it just won't come to this commission because we're trying to be more farm-friendly and make the process easier.
Okay, but there still is some oversight, so.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
They still need to give us a site plan, a
Okay.
full engineered grading plan,
All right.
utilities.
Okay,
And quite honestly, I don't think that these are going to be like apartments that you might be thinking, it's like, oh, there's going to be an apartment building. Basically, it's a
Dormitory.
no, I've
it's
seen,
a dormitory.
I've seen yours, I've seen others,
I
I've
mean,
seen others
you're
in
not
the
going to
surrounding
have
towns.
you're
Yeah, I
not
know
going to
what it
have
is.
amenities
I
with a
understand
pool
what it
room
is.
and all of these things.
So-
It's just strictly a housing unit.
This might make you feel better, Commissioner Helinski. Anytime somebody comes in for a zoning permit, a site plan is required. And you know Rick, he reviews it in full detail. So I can guarantee that if it's in the regulations, it will not be missed. The requirement of the site plan has to be met in order for a zoning permit to even be issued. And then again, the zoning officer is tagged in for a second time in the building permit process. So he gets another time to look at the building permit plans to make sure it matches up to what we received in the office for a zoning permit.
And aside from that, just everybody that would be at our ART, police or fire, engineering,
Sure.
North Central, they all get to weigh in on it.
Okay, so it's
It
all-
goes up
it's
on
all
OpenGov
basically
and
the same
everybody
type of thing.
reviews it.
Okay, would this be then subject to authorization of administrative approval on our agenda?
No.
These buildings?
It
No.
would be a zoning permit.
Okay.
It would be a
We could
ministerial
report
action.
on it if you would like. I mean, and quite honestly, that's something that I could do as on a director's report. Hey, we got a farm workers housing application in,
I think
and
it'd be nice if we're informed, as
Sure.
to what's
Yeah.
going on. Lastly, I guess I'd like to say that I agree with Commissioner Petronella on the 20 acres. I think that might be a good change for us.
Anybody else?
Why don't we compromise, make it 15?
We could do 15. Why do I feel like I'm at an auction somewhere?
I'm curious.
I'm a businessman, that's what I do.
And I'm a lawyer trying to get a job done, so
And the
we'll,
new guy up here on the wall does the same thing.
we'll,
So-
we'll go to 15, but we're not going higher.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. If you're doing farm workers housing and you have a parcel that's 5 acres, 10 acres, 20 acres, 50 acres, you alluded to the fact that it would be centered in the parcel.
Yeah, for the mo-
I mean,
often.
to me, I would almost think, well, no, it's going to be as close to the road as possible. So can you explain why it might be centered?
No, when I say central to the parcel, it doesn't mean it wouldn't be close to the road. It would be away from the surrounding uses. So,
Right.
in looking at one site that we have in mind, indeed, the dormitory would be close to the road, but back from the side yard substantially more than the setback we've established. Like I said, the farmers don't want to have neighbors that are unhappy with them because they can cause difficulties for them. So they want to work with them in terms of the location of this. And I think, there would probably be, as part of that process, an outreach of some sort that would, so it wouldn't be any surprise coming in. And it's going to be away from the sensitive uses that may be nearby.
So I'm wondering if really the issue is the setback and not the acreage. Would you rather have a larger setback? If you had 200 feet setback, then that's a total of an acre, basically, 200 to 200, that's, so I don't know if I don't know if you'd like to opine on that, Owen or Steve, or...
Well, we had a sidebar conversation. You may have seen some of it going on here. No, I got this microphone here. Besides, I got my Navy voice I can use. We had a sidebar conversation, and you got to think of all the 20-plus parcels that these particular applicants have, and their configuration, location, and so forth. 15 would be okay. Something larger would present some difficulties. As to setbacks, I don't know, Owen. This is Owen Jarmark for the record.
For the record. I don't know, is it working?
You got it.
I think in terms of setback, an important part to think about is that we have a dormitory now that's at 151 Abbey Road in Enfield. And so based on what staff has said, that was approved via special use permit in the late 90s. And that currently has a 100-foot setback, I think, side and front setback. And so we made it 200. The purpose of this regulation is to, permit new housing for farm workers, but it also would make all the other farm worker housing in town a conforming use, where if we change it to 200, that's now a non-conforming use and could present problems down the road.
Right.
So that's why I think we'd like to keep it at 100 to help ourselves. And I know I'm familiar with other farm worker housing that are definitely within that 100. That way they don't have this non-conforming use in the future.
Good. Thank you.
Joe?
I'm well aware of what it takes to run a farm. I was around it long enough. There's a lot of verbiage here that is kind of got thrown at us, and we're creating a new regulation, basically. And I feel a little uncomfortable kind of ramming this through without some more commission discussion on, seems like there's a few concerns, and maybe we should go over this a little more and maybe tweak some things.
That's your prerogative.
That's my concern.
We give you the regulations as they're proposed, and it's your discussion.
Excuse me, we should open it up to the public just
Yeah,
to
we
make
should
our
do that.
call and
Need to do
so
that,
forth
yeah.
before we go any further with this and get that out.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of comments, I think. You have several locations that total, I think you said 400 acres, somewhere around there. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So how many of these parcels are over the 10 or 15 acres? And is there any way that because you're going to use the 400 acres, so if you want to build places for everybody to stay, that, I don't know, the way I add it up, it comes to about 800 beds. 2 per acre. Now, my question is the housing going to go on one piece of property, or are you going to have several?
Just for economy sense, it would go on one, and we'd actually try to consolidate them and keep all of our housing in one central farm, just for economies of scale. And it's easier to have one sewer connect and then one building as opposed to multiple spread out over different parcels.
Well, that's my thought. A place with 800 beds
Well,
is a big place. I'm just saying, this is the possibility when I read this. I'm not trying to be hard to get along with.
No, but I think, as Owen Jarmark would tell you, or Steve Jarmark would tell you, is that is that a workable size? And I think the two farm worker dormitories you have are just 60-plus beds, right?
65, 64.
Yeah, so that's the size they're going to come in, is probably 60 beds at a time.
That's fine. But I'm saying the ability, when I read all this, it's not what you could come in for and what we would finish with. The second question is, we talk about no parking. And that's true, you shouldn't need any parking. But what about the buses or the trucks that you use to transport the people? Where do those get parked?
Just if I understand your first question, it's with respect to the 2 beds per acre in the town of Enfield. And I think when we were going through this regulation, that's what Summers has in their regs. So that's where we copied and pasted it from, quite frankly. And for us, we would be agreeable to less, of 1 bed per acre or something like that, because I understand your concern with, but I think we have to be mindful of other smaller farms, of, a greenhouse farm or someone that, if they only own 10 acres, 20 men on a farm, it sounds like a lot, but it's a lot of work, and sometimes that it would, potentially not be sufficient for their operation. We didn't want to get tunnel vision on just what suited our needs, and we wanted to try to help the larger community as well.
A bus?
Oh,
What are you going to do with buses?
Most of our housing units have, the one at 128 Moody Road right now has 64 beds, and the one at 151 Abbey has 68, and so there's probably 3 to 5 buses per building. So we do have some, our site plans do show some gravel parking and whatnot, but it's not specific to, a bus doesn't fit into a generic parking space anyways. So we definitely make sure we want to have adequate room to store them and to have them be able to maneuver safely.
Okay, thank you.
So just a simple question. I pretty much already know the answer to this, but I just want to hear from you. How long are you guys here for?
So it's a great question. We, the federal H-2A program, you're able to recruit workers from just about, I'd say almost any country that you'd like. We predominantly recruit from Jamaica. Our guys, it phases up, so our first group of 30 comes in April 1st, and they're here till November 15th, and then we slowly phase up to 125 men from April 1st, and then by July 15th, we're at full staff, and they're all here until roughly November 15th.
And
So
some of
from
them have been with you for literally decades, right?
Yeah, we started the program in 1993, and the first 3 men that we started with have come back every consecutive year since then, and we now have their sons that come and travel with them to work, and it's an incredible opportunity for them, their family. It's great for the country of Jamaica or wherever they travel from, but it's also great for the local community because they, at the end of the year, we send home 8 land sea containers of goods that they purchase in the local economy that they can buy at a discount, and we ship it in bulk home because it's more readily available here. So the system benefits everyone involved, and there's certainly trickle-down economics that come with it.
Yeah. So they're basically, what I was trying to get at is, they're gone right now, right? They're not even here.
No, right. Yeah.
So the housing is only keeping them housed for what, 7 months?
I understand.
It's just, I'm finding it hard to believe that staff was willing to work with you, and we're for farms, out of anything, we're making it so hard on farmers, and I don't understand why. I don't. I just don't get it. The public hearing, Commissioner Petronelli is right. They should have an opinion. By right, though, they should have been here tonight. But that is something we do. But changing and even going to the 15 acres, I just don't get it, staff. I just don't get it. Everything to you right now that you've discussed seems to satisfy staff. And I didn't have this long, and I wasn't here the last couple weeks, but I started looking at this at 10 o'clock this morning, and by 1 o'clock, it's kind of there's nothing that I read that permits them not to have it here, that puts a red flag to me. The reason why I asked them that question is because I know the farmers are here, they get shipped back. They're not here all year long. Never a problem. And once again, it gets to me because it's farming. It's farming. We're losing it every single day for something that not just myself, a lot of other people are against. If they don't have a farm, you know what, it's going to be something else. We need farms. That's what infield was. Summers is now getting that. I could care less about Summers, no disrespect to Summers. We're infield. But infield was farms. It was all farms. And every day I turn around and I see these big, I see these big solar things that are absolutely doing nothing, and not one person can explain the good they're doing for our community. But I could give you 100 reasons what farms are doing for our community. My point, if looking at this, another thing that we're going to just keep dragging and dragging and dragging, that really makes a lot of sense to have at least something drawn up. We change regulations almost every time I come in here. So if there was an issue, it would come in front of us and we'd fix it. But we have to start somewhere.
And to follow up on the solar part, we don't know what it's doing to the land under those solar panels. So nobody's tested the land to see what those solar panels are doing to that land. So, and why they're not here in the winter is because they're all on the bobsled team.
Any other questions, concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I do, I do want to, go, support staff's findings. I think staff worked hard on this, and the applicant as well, to show some examples from, or compare it and use other communities as inspiration and go through due diligence. So I do want to, trust, what staff has brought to us and what they deem acceptable for the town. I definitely don't want us to make it any more difficult for farmers. I think we're kind of all in agreement there. We all put it in the POCD. Yeah, I mean, a 100-foot setback is pretty generous. I mean, if we were to, possibly throw out another, some sort of compromise, maybe like a 200-foot side yard setback, just if we want to give a little more buffer to adjoining residential communities. But I mean, it's not a crazy complex regulation that they're bringing to us. I personally don't think we need to kick the can down the road. Yeah, I mentioned about the non-conforming. I did check the 151 Moody Road example one, and it looks like it's about 200 feet off the nearest residential property, which is why I threw out that. Go ahead.
It's 128 Moody, then it's 151 Abbey with the.
Oh, 151 Abbey. Yeah. Sorry.
It's about 100. I think it's roughly.
Well, it's 100. I think it's 100 feet setback off Abbey Road.
Yep.
But I think we're probably in that 150 from the Buchanan Road neighbors, and that was. I think 100 was what they asked for, but we just went with the 150 because of the proximity of where we wanted to hook to the sewer and things.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, and I was just looking at the satellite view, so I don't see the lot lines there, but I saw the residence, and the residence ended up being about 200 feet away. So yeah, something like 150 feet, perhaps, if we wanted to give a little more side buffer. 100 feet from the road is I think that's sufficient. Yeah, the 10 acres seems reasonable, and they're amenable to 15 acres, but again, staff has pretty good insight into the rest of the town. They're obviously concerned with what they're going to come to us in the future. staff has a better eye of what else is in the town and what has potential. So I do want to lean a little more on staff. So that's just my comments.
And I do want to follow up. I think if we leave it 100-foot setback, we're not going to make any existing ones non-conforming. So, and every one is going to be looked at as they come in. So if there's, staff can, adjust it accordingly. And just to point out that here it is again, Enfield is going to set the example for the rest of the state. So let's do this right.
I'm all set.
Oh, okay. You folks all set?
Yes, sir.
Call for the public.
This is a public hearing, so I don't see anybody that's not connected with these folks that may want to speak. But since I'm supposed to do it, going once, going twice, gone. Should we close the public hearing, or you want to table it, or what do you guys want to do?
I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
Oh,
Second. What?
I just want, are you satisfied with everything? Because if you wanted something else, if you close the public hearing, that's
Well,
it.
that's why I was asking.
Okay, just wanted to remind you.
I think we got to table this. I'd like to, we have a couple of commission members that are not here, including our chairman. I think, we'd like to give that a little bit of respect and input as well, and hear from them as well. That's my recommendation to
Okay.
table it for tonight.
So I rescind my second.
I would have to agree with John.
All right, well, we've got a motion.
I rescind my
You
second.
rescind the second, okay? So then-
Rescind the motion?
I'll rescind the motion.
Okay, then I'll,
Motion to table.
Second.
until the next meeting, which is what, 7th of February or somewhere around there,
The 13th.
the 13th. And
I made the motion and Christian seconded.
then what we'll do is it'll give us time to look at this more deeply. And also, it'll give us time to, at the next meeting, once we looked at it more deeply, it'll give us time to either make decisions or do whatever. If you have any more information you'd like to give to staff, that'd be fine, because they could bring that with them to the next shot. But other than that, I will, go ahead.
Can I maybe recommend to the applicant just to provide further information for us on their existing housing, if they could bring to us for next meeting what the existing setbacks are and the existing lot sizes? Great, that'd be helpful.
All right, then,
Have to vote on the motion.
can we vote on the motion, please? To table it till the 13th?
Show of hands.
Just a show of hands.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
None. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion says we're tabled until the 13th.
I did not.
Are you,
I opposed.
Okay. So it's 6-1.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
thank you. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Perfect.
And
Any new business? No new business, commissioners' correspondence? None?
I got one thing.
Okay.
Do we have a meeting coming up about, a workshop coming up?
Calendar. Yeah, I do. So the next date for our workshop is February 3rd.
Okay.
So we could possibly discuss this?
Well,
then or
no, this is pending on your agenda. You do not want to do
It's got to be on
discussion
the
on
public
this.
hearing, doesn't it?
Yeah, you don't want to discuss this until this has been approved or acted on.
absolutely.
Okay.
Christian has a comment.
Yeah.
through the chair to staff. I know a couple weeks ago, when the mall redevelopment presentation came to us, there were questions and concerns, from me about the transit stop. And I believe that you had mentioned that you were going to try to connect with Department of Transportation to figure things out.
We have
Are there any updates on that situation?
no update.
We can't find a spot yet.
We have been working with some of the plazas nearby, but our Director of Economic Development is still trying to find a spot for them. So I don't have an update just yet.
So were we able to, I guess we confirm though that the DOT does not have a lease or
We have confirmed that the lease was terminated and the property was sold to Namdar. So when Sonia says that they were unfamiliar with any of this, with the
That makes sense.
stop, it's because it didn't officially exist. Because it's still there, but there's actually no lease anymore. So the DOT was informed of this, and they knew that Woodsonia was coming in, and so they've been trying to find a spot even before we contacted them. So, but we keep asking, and different plazas are just opting out. So we're still looking for a spot.
So we're talking about the commuter lot, is that?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay,
The
all right.
CT Transit. Yep. Well, I mean, also the local Magic Carpet uses it as a stop as well. Yeah, I appreciate your efforts there, and I hope you keep us updated because I know
definitely will.
they wanna move, and we gotta get ahead of them.
We want to keep them.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Are they still using that?
Yes.
Without a lease?
Yes.
And the town's using it too without a lease?
I don't know about the town.
Well, if the Magic Bus
They
stops
are.
there.
They are.
The Magic Carpet bus stop, I don't think they operate on like a lease basis.
Okay.
It's kind of like a general bus route. I could totally be wrong.
Yeah,
The
I
Director
don't
of
know.
Social Services would know how that whole thing works out.
Okay.
We don't have knowledge.
State of Connecticut's running transit buses and they're without a lease. That's-
It was a shock to all of us.
Director of Planning report.
Well, that was part of it.
Okay.
With all the boards and commissions we have like 2 applications.
Okay.
I mean, we're kind of worried. It's very odd that we have so few applications this time of year. So it's good because it's giving us ample time to work on the zoning regulations, but it's just very odd. So we're just kind of looking at ourselves as like, they're really empty. So come on in, there's lots of time to come to planning and zoning.
Administrative
Developers
approvals.
out there. There really isn't much to report. That's about it.
The administrative,
We do have one.
yeah.
This is for the Elks Lodge to allow a bar in the basement under SPR 1947 at 138 Maple Street.
Yeah, basically, this is due to, the state liquor permits are actually changing, but they want to make sure that all of the potential bars for this type of use, the Elks Lodge, has a local approval for all the sites, and they have a window in the basement. I've never been there, so you probably all have been there. Apparently, there's a window that they're going to use as service. So that's what would be approving, and so we're just doing that administratively, if that's okay.
Okay. Anybody?
I know the layout, that's odd that would need some sort of
The liquor license calls for it,
State, yeah.
because they wanted to change the liquor license so they could serve on both floors. So anyway, so anybody got any problem with?
Good job.
Thank you.
You're all set.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to say you can do that, or can you just do it?
No, we've just been reporting on it.
Yeah, it's like your blessing.
Okay. Applications to be received, you said you only got a couple and you
We
don't have
have
them
one
here.
being received tonight, Mr. Chair. We have SPR number 1948, 115A Elm Street, application for a site plan review for site modifications and an addition to the existing building, Playful Minds Connecticut LLC, applicant owner, map 43, lot 6, BR zone. This is for the daycare center that is in the Elm Street Plaza where Dunkin' and Kohl's is.
Yeah, just the other side of Coles.
Yeah, they want to do some modifications so they can accompany more kids, fix their drop off, and do an addition onto the building.
Okay. Opportunities and unresolved issues.
I think so. None.
Okay. We don't have an executive session.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, stand up.
Second.
Time 8:35.